sometimes in order for the manifestation to birth in your life, there's a clearing that needs to happen first. I locked myself in the bathroom. I looked in the mirror. I couldn't recognize my own reflection. And at that same moment, I felt as though the crown of my head had just opened. And I all of a sudden had this vision of me on stage speaking to all of these women. And I got this download, and it was, you're here to work with women and help them heal. That was sort of the starting point of having an awakening. And I can remember walking down the street every morning and having these really beautiful visions of me surrounded by community, surrounded by, vibrancy and children, and just, it was magic. And so I felt this first initial hit of coming alive and coming online.
My guest today is Sheleana Aiyana, also known as Shay. She's the founder of Rising Woman and the author of a book that I felt like she wrote just for me. It's called Becoming the One, and it is a powerful guide into somatics, shadow work, and conscious relationship. Was there a moment where you were like, oh, I feel guided? There's a moment you had a crisis or an epiphany, or was it a slow, gradual awakening?
I think...
Wow. Well, I feel so excited, like a little giddy, actually, to get to meet you and to get to interview you. For any of our listeners who don't know who you are yet, I actually feel honored to introduce you to them. You are an extraordinary author. You are one of my favorite social media content. I think, I save things on Instagram, like under wisdom. And I think you're probably my most saved account. Like the way that you synthesize astrology and women and like divine feminine, and the way that you write is so simultaneously wise and clear. It's really rare, and to have the depth of knowledge and mastery that you have, but also the accessibility. And my marker of a master is someone who can take very complex esoteric knowledge and communicate it in a way that people can receive. And I think that you have that in spades. And so thank you for your mastery.
Thank you.
And thank you for the lifetime of work that you've done on yourself. Because I think a lot of people think like, oh, she has 2.5 million Instagram followers. She's got millions of people who have read her book. She's an astrologer. She's done all this work. She must have, had it so easy, or she must have come from a really healthy, loving household. And I know that that's not the case, that you were raised in a foster care system, and that this work and this wisdom and knowledge is hard earned, that you've had to practice it for your own survival. And so I'm curious to know, like, when in your journey did you first sort of like wake up? Was there a moment where you're like, oh, I feel guided? There's a moment you had a crisis or an epiphany, or was it a slow, gradual awakening?
It's a little bit of both. And just thank you also. I just want to really thank you, because I feel your depth and your medicine come through. And it's just always a pleasure to meet people like you, and then to hear that my work has impacted you, because you're also somebody that I really respect. So I really want to thank you for all that you said.
And just to gush on you a little bit more, so those of you who don't know, so I will do an intro properly, but like Sheleana Aiyana, she's the author of Becoming the One. You guys, I read this book, and I felt like you wrote this book for me. I have been single now for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, and it's the first time in my life I've been single, like
Okay.
consciously and for a
Yeah.
minute,
Yeah.
and there's so much beauty and depth and fear and shadow and all of it. It's like it's the light and the dark all mixed together. But for me, I can spiral into a story of like, I'm doing it wrong,
Yeah.
because I teach manifestation and I do desire to be in a relationship. And so it's like, well, if I'm not, then am I doing something wrong? And this book was like such a beautiful invitation for me to deepen with my inner child, and to love myself and choose myself and feel my own feelings and things. Of course, we know it consciously. Those of us who are on the path, it's like one thing to know it intellectually, and another thing to just be like, there's nothing wrong.
To
And
feel it in the body.
to feel it in the body,
Yeah.
and to just keep connecting with our inner little ones. Like no
Yeah.
matter how many medicine journeys and tantra and like, I learned so many advanced practices, and I just keep coming back to it's just about loving our little inner ones.
100%. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I'd
Yeah.
love to at some point loop back to your point about manifestation as well in regards to becoming the one, because
Hmm.
and attracting a partner, because that's something
Hmm.
I really like to touch on as well.
Cool.
So yeah.
Yeah, but let us know like what, because I think your journey is really fascinating to have like
Mhm.
this depth of wisdom and clarity and mastery, and to have called in seemingly like a really healthy,
Mhm.
beautiful relationship, but coming
Mhm.
from a really intense background. I know that a lot of us, maybe for ourselves or for someone else, you might think like, oh, there's so much abuse there, there's so much
Mhm.
abandonment, there's so much wounding. There's
Yeah.
no way you're going to transcend that to get
Mhm.
into a truly healthy relationship, but it feels like you have. And
Yeah.
so I'd love to just hear about that journey for you.
Yeah, when you asked if there was one specific moment, like a
Hmm.
crisis, there really was, but there was also this thread of spirit and aliveness with me from a very, very young age. So I was, out of body journeying and having pretty spiritually connected dreams by 3 years old. And so I really started to have, I would say, spiritually deep experiences within myself quite young.
Hmm.
And that's actually, at that age, I was experiencing trauma as well. And so I feel that there was a lot of guidance coming to me through the spirit world when I was so young, because I needed that tether. And also, I think, some of us who have trauma, we are more open in some ways to both the light and the dark. So there was this thread of aliveness for me, but I did spend a long time in a very unconscious, very self-sabotage dark place. And that was, in and out of foster homes, addicted to crystal meth at 14, living on in and out of the streets with, sleeping on friends' couches and in garages, and just generally not being a conscious or loving person in any way. And
What ages were you in foster homes?
so
What?
I started going in at 3, and in and out until 16, at which point I moved out on my own, became sort of like independent,
Hmm.
and started working 2 jobs and homeschooling myself. And then by 19, I found myself in a really abusive relationship that I'm really lucky to have survived. It was really, really catastrophic. But there was a moment in that experience where, and I will kind of save any gory details, but I locked myself in the bathroom. I looked in the mirror. I couldn't recognize my own reflection. And at that same moment, I felt as though the crown of my head had just opened. And I all of a sudden had this vision of me on stage speaking to all of these women. And I got this download, and it was, you're here to work with women and help them heal,
Mm.
and to heal from abuse. And it was funny because I remember driving down the road with him one day, and I told him that I had had that vision, and he just kind of looked at me like, what the heck, because of course we were in a very abusive dynamic, and he's like, what do you say to that? um, so I obviously ended up leaving that relationship, and then I met somebody who
How
seemed
did you leave? Like for anyone who feels like they're stuck in a dynamic
yeah.
that they can't get out of, like did you have help? Did you just like like quit cold turkey? Did you physically remove yourself? Like, or was it the fact that you had gotten the vision that
Yeah.
you're like, now I'm moving towards something
Hmm.
versus away from the abuse?
So, well, this is, my story is really intense. So, I want to be like, almost give a trigger warning a little bit for people, because that
Hmm.
the way that I got out is not, it's not a nice way, actually.
Hmm.
It ended up being uh another very abusive situation. In fact, I was essentially kidnapped by some other man when I went to go on a work trip. And that whole story is really intense, but essentially I ended up with this other person for a while, and then I ended up in a dynamic where he was not violent but still abusive. um, and so I sort of just rested in that for a little bit. I was quite disoriented, right? Keep in mind, I'm 19. I've come from a whole lifetime of childhood trauma. Then I'm in a physically very, very abusive relationship. And then I get plucked out of that into this other really disorienting dynamic. But this person is at least, he's providing stability for me. So I sort of just rested in that for a little while. And then I ended up just packing up everything that I could when one day when he was out, because I had tried to leave multiple times, and I ended up just packing up what I could and selling a few of my laptops that I had, and just jetting and getting a little room. It was a bed in a living room with like a sheet dividing the room up. With There's three women total in this very small little apartment, and I just made it work.
Wow.
And so that was sort of the starting point of having an awakening. And I can remember walking down the street every morning and having these really beautiful visions of me surrounded by community, surrounded by, vibrancy and children, and just it was magic. And so I felt this first initial hit of coming alive and coming online. But I was 19, 20 years old at this point. So my version of awake was not that deep, not that introspective. It was like, okay, crystals and spiritual language. And, I can remember just learning about observing your mind for the first time. And I thought, wow, what a concept. I started reading Dr. Nathaniel Branden, How to Raise Your Self Esteem, and studying NLP. And that was sort of my intro, right? So then I meet this guy, and I'm 22 at this point, and I'm a real mess, like totally a mess. But he seems so kind and so nice and so safe. And so we just gravitate toward each other and we end up in a relationship. And he lives in a different country. He lives in the US, and he lived in Vegas at the time. And 22-year-old me thinks that's really cool, and so he invites me to fly down there, and he wants to come move to Canada, move in with me and some of my other girlfriends. And so I fly down there and I get off the plane, and he picks me up, and his car is so disgusting. Like, it's full of garbage. It's just horrific. And I can remember driving down the highway in Vegas thinking, what the heck am I doing here? I need to just turn back around and leave. Like, this is not right. But I don't, of course, because 22-year-old me has no idea how to do that. And we get to his house, and it's so dirty and there's dust everywhere, and he doesn't have any money, and he's expecting me to pay for everything. And so I like buy him suitcases and pack him up and bring him back to Canada with me.
Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah, like I have some stories. So anyways, long story short, with this guy is, we stay together for a while. We stay together for a few years, and he's just a very helpless, dependent, kind of lazy guy. And I, of course, grew up with the caretaking archetype, and I learned how to be the rescuer and the saver. So perfect for me, right? So I just
Mhm.
step right in and I just take care of it all. And eventually we can't keep hopping the border anymore because he's from another country and so am I. And so we get married because we're like, well,
Oh my God. This is too good.
yeah. So here I am, like, what, 23, 24 years old. I think I'm like 24 or 25 even at this point. And we get married. And, he's the kind of guy where when we're going to move, it would be too stressful for him. He can't handle any stress at all. So I buy him a plane ticket and I send him away to go visit his friends for 2 months while I organize everything, pack everything, organize the movers, unpack the whole house, make it ready, and then fly him back. Okay. Like, we're talking serious mother son dynamic here. Like,
Yeah.
worse even, because a mother would at least teach her kid how to do chores.
Yeah, like you're looking your king and he's being treated like a queen. He's being
Yeah.
no princess. He's being
Yeah.
treated like a princess.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, so of course, and this is something that I talk about a lot now is, we both played into our familial wounds so deeply together.
Mhm.
He really held that mother wound strongly, and so did I, but we weren't aware of it and we weren't talking about it. And so
Mm.
our dynamic was just really unhealthy and codependent, and just not anything anybody would ever aspire to be in. And so, of course, when you turn somebody into your dependent and you emphasize and enable their helplessness, you almost invite them to rebel against you as if you're their, devouring mother, because
Mm,
they have to find themselves and they have to try to become a man. And so, of course, what he did was betray me in every way.
mm.
And so, I lost my money, my business. He left me with everything, all of our bills. He left the house full of his stuff for almost a year. And he left with another woman that he had fallen in love with. But here's the interesting thing about manifestation. Okay. So I'm laying in my bed one night, staring up at the ceiling. And this is in my new book. And I think to myself, gosh, he's just such a burden. And I really want to get rid of this guy. I don't want to be in this relationship, but I can't bear the guilt of hurting him. So I hope he falls in love with somebody else so that she can take care of him. It took 2 months. There she was, and she came and she took him. And
Thank you.
so, but then, of course, because Sheleana's never done any of her inner work, she's never looked at any of her childhood wounds, she's never done any shadow work, she's never processed anything from her past. As soon as, he's gone, I see him driving down the road. I run out there barefoot trying to chase his car down. And I am just in a catastrophic meltdown inside. I'm panicking. And then I have this vision of me, 3 years old, kicking and screaming while my mom's just driving away after she dropped me off in the night at a foster home. So I'm having this full flashback. And in that very moment, I also had this powerful, again, opening of the crown and just this relief wash over me. Because if this was about that moment, if this was about little me, if this was about my inner child and my wounds, then that meant that I didn't need him to come back. And it meant that I didn't need anything from him in order to be okay, that this was an inside job. And so
Mhm.
that was that crisis point, that real awakening where I realized this was never about him. And so that's the moment that marked the journey for me. That's where I began doing the deep inner work. And within a year, I had started writing and sharing through Rising Woman. It took years before I ever turned it into an actual business, but that's how it started.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's such an extreme but clear example of how that it's always about like reparenting ourselves and finding those traumatic moments or those traumatic memories and then
Yeah,
like being that safe, secure adult that we maybe didn't have, but then giving that to ourselves. And
absolutely.
and so when you say that your crown opens, because you said twice, you looked
Yeah.
at yourself in the mirror, your crown
Mhm.
open. In this moment that you're like flashing back to your inner 3 year old who's
Yeah.
being, abandoned, which feels like this sort of anxious attachment or
Mhm.
anxious avoidant piece.
Yeah.
Um, what does that mean for you when you say your crown opens? Like,
It's a sensation. It's a spontaneous sensation that I get. And I write about this in my book, Becoming the One, how we all sort of receive information or insights or truth or confirmation in our own unique ways. And I mean, you can look at to human design even for this, right? Like some of us have this emotional wave where we sleep on it. Some of us feel this instant knowing, like I'm splenic authority, so it's instant. um and some of us hear words or we see sentences or we get visual images. I get a little bit of a mix. I get this sensation of literally a tunnel opening up through the top of my head where I just feel a connection. I don't know what that is quite to explain it for you, but
Mhm.
it's just this, it's like a download that happens where I just get a message. And I see full images of something, and then I get clear sentences that just tell me
Mhm.
like one sentence of what's going to happen or what needs to happen or whatever the truth is in that moment that will guide me. So that's sort of something that's been happening to me since I was really small.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's cool. And you actually see a sentence
Yeah, yeah,
versus
sometimes
hearing it.
yeah, well, I hear it and then I sometimes will see the actual vision, like the scene of it in the
Hmm.
future. Um which is, always weird but cool. Like I've actually met many of my friends' children before they even told me they were pregnant. And then when they have their kid, I'm like, it looks exactly like the child that I saw. So it's fun and also weird. And it's not something that I turn on or off. It's very spontaneous.
Oh, interesting. So you're
Yeah,
not like, okay, I'm gonna go in. Like I'm reading Spirit Babies right now,
I love
where
that
it's
book.
like teaching you how
Yeah.
to communicate to the unborn children. But it's so for you, it's just it happens when nature wants it, not when you desire it per se.
Yeah, I mean, I can for the spirit baby connection, that one I can turn on pretty quickly when I'm sitting with
Mhm.
somebody. Generally, I'm right, I can sense what's in their field or I can see their baby. But often people's babies they just come to me. Like if there's a pregnant person in my living room, I've had this happen where she was pregnant and her baby came to me while I was just having a shower, and so I knew her baby was a girl.
Mm.
So just little things like that.
Oh, I wanna read actually because what you were just talking about, like mothering this partner. I'm reading from your amazing Instagram platform from
Mm.
Rising Woman on mothering a romantic partner.
Mhm.
So good. When we mother our partners, we set ourselves up for betrayal. If
Mm.
you make everything cozy for them and free from challenge, they have to rebel against you to metaphorically individuate and find themselves. But here's the truth, the message we unknowingly send when we try to take care of everything for them is I don't see you as capable. By caretaking them, we think we're being loving, but we're actually lowering their sense of empowerment and removing the challenge they deeply crave and need in order to grow.
Mhm.
I think this is so interesting for a lot of women who consider themselves like codependent or people pleasers or like avoided conflict to keep the peace in their families and then can habituate that in their romantic partners like, oh, I'll just make it really easy so that they'll love
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
and not recognizing that we're then robbing them of the thing that a lot of men want, which is the challenge, the hunt, the chase, and that the boundaries that could be like you setting boundaries is you kind of being in your power and what are
Mhm.
my yeses, what are my nos, and it's just such a fascinating, it feels like relationships are an endless and ever-changing playground for self
Mhm.
and personal development, and it feels like that's been a lot of the crux of your work is using relationships and conscious relationships as the syllabus ultimately for inner work. But can you just explain to us like what is becoming the one and how does
Mhm.
it synthesize somatic work, working with nature, astrology even, and inner
Mhm.
child work?
Mhm. Yeah. So just to clarify too, I'm not an astrologer. Yeah,
Oh,
I have astrologers on my team, and
okay, that's good.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
seems like you do a great job of synthesizing what's happening in the stars, but okay, but
yeah.
good to know. Okay.
Yeah, well, I work with a group and I have astrologers on my team who
Okay.
are the ones who are doing all of the charts. And then I actually help co-write everything so that it is synthesized clear because that is my
Great.
gift.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Are you a projector by
yeah,
chance? What are
I
you?
am. I
Yeah,
am,
me,
yeah.
me too.
6'2". What's your profile line?
5'3", but I'm a
Okay.
splenic projector.
That's not
Splenic
surprising
throat.
to me that you have a 5. So we're both splenic projectors.
Okay. Yeah, with I have an open throat, which is
Okay.
yeah, which is why I think I'm good speaking in front of an audience.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I have a defined throat. And so
Hmm.
what's interesting is I have there's a my marketing director who helps write my emails. She has an open throat so she can like take on the voice of others, and her and I we almost have an identical chart except for my throat is defined and hers is open. It's
Interesting.
really yeah, anyways. I feel like you and I
Yeah,
could go down some rabbit holes.
we totally could. But I've heard my friend Natalie McNeil says that 2026 is going to be the year of the projectors because
Mhm.
this is the age of synthesis.
Mhm.
Because that's essentially what AI is, right? It's a great
Yeah.
synthesizer, and that what we need is like not like necessarily one modality, but how are all of these modalities synthesizing together to serve humanity right
Yeah.
now?
Yeah. Yeah, it's something there's something there's a combination of things that I do with people and when I
Mm.
work with them and it's I bring in their human design. I get their chart read. We look at I know astrology very well. I don't call myself an astrologer because that's not what I do.
Got
But
it.
we look at their chart and we look at, what is your Chiron? Where's your 10th house? Like what's going on in all of these areas and then we kind of weave that together with the shadow work and the work in nature.
Mm.
But becoming the one is a framework of coming home to yourself. And it is the idea that conscious relationship is not about you and the other so much as it is about this cycle of you and yourself, you and nature, you and other, you and the elements and spirit. And so it's a web of relationship. And your relationship to yourself is the foundation from which all other relationships will either falter or flourish. And so that is the relationship that we focus on. Becoming
Hmm.
the one is really, it's sort of a comeback to the idea that there's a one out there for you, that there's this, other half, your missing half, your twin flame or
You
something like that.
complete me.
Exactly. And so it's the idea that, we are actually, we're programmed through, religion and these types of narratives that we're born sinners, we're born broken, that we're incomplete. And and so becoming the one is, we are born whole.
Mhm.
We are born complete. And what I believe is that many of us just forget. And so it's a remembrance. It's not like a learning, it's a remembrance that we are whole. And it's a remembrance of the divinity that is within us. And so what I see happen is that, we come into this world perfect and whole and innocent, and this essence that is just so innately beautifully connected to spirit, God, whatever source energy you want to refer to. And I know this deeply because I have a child, and I see it. It's so clear. And then through our conditioning, because we're sort of cut off from that source in a way when we come to earth, what I feel happens is that we project God onto our parents. And
Mhm.
so we're constantly looking for that source energy, that divinity, and we're eventually, let down because humans are humans and we're imperfect and we just can't get it all right. And so begins the search for divine energy in another, and we're looking for somebody to complete us, make us whole, give us all of the love that we long for, meet those needs that didn't get met when we were small. And we can really forget about the relationship we have with ourselves along the way. And so, in becoming the one, I take people through a journey of understanding who they are and the love that already exists within them, but also exploring some of those wounds, like the mother and the father wound, and the inner child, understanding what is at the root of that. And if you were to remove your mother and father from the pedestal of that archetype and just see them as human, could that bring some relief, perhaps? And if you were to tend to your inner child with the love and devotion that you wish you had received, could that perhaps connect you back to your own sense of your ability and capability to care for yourself? And then can we slowly move into shadow work, where we begin to see that we are the one at the helm, and that we are the common denominator in all of our relationships. And so, whatever patterns or dynamics continue to repeat, we have something to do with that. We're not responsible for everything. We're not responsible for what other people say or do, but we are responsible for the dynamic that we're in and how we respond to it and how we show up for it. So, doing that shadow work piece in a really self compassionate way brings us into a state of self awareness. And it also helps our relationships, because if we are in a constant cycle of blame and we think that the other person is always the problem, we're just going to recycle people, because we'll just be like, okay, well, there's something wrong with you. Things aren't working out the way that I planned. So I'm just going to get rid of you. I'm going to find a new person and that's going to be better. But then the cycle repeats. So we have to go back to the root, come home to the self, do that shadow work. What role are you playing in this? And then we get into things like core values. What is it that you value, and how have your values been leading you so far? And what values do you need to bring to the forefront to lead in your life so that your life reflects who you really are? And so that's the framework that we go into in my book, which you've obviously read,
Mhm.
and it feels like a really beautiful place for people to land after any sort of breakdown or crisis or in a life transition.
Mm. Yeah, it really is. It's so profound.
Mm.
And I'm curious, how would you advise people on shadow work? Because that
Mhm.
word, that term gets thrown around a lot,
It
and
does.
I don't I don't think I really understood it until very recently.
Mhm.
And for me, it took someone that I love very much, like bringing my shadow into, because
Mhm.
like it's in the shadow for a reason. Like we don't want to see that about ourselves, and then when we turn around, we can't see it. And so I'm curious, like how do you define shadow work?
Mhm.
And then how do you help people to see the thing that we are actively protecting ourselves from about
Mhm.
ourselves? The things
Mhm.
that the deepest fears, the things that we don't want to acknowledge or see, sometimes out of self-preservation and protection. Like how do
Right.
you invite people to see that with
Mhm.
love, and how do you create safety enough so that people can even acknowledge? that
Hmm.
they don't want to see.
I can't wait for my next book to come out. I'm going to send it to you as soon as it's out. But I have a really fun writing process for this one. But I will say it's multiple factors here. One of them is self-compassion. You can't do shadow work if you have no sense of self-esteem. If you have a lot of self-loathing and you already feel like you're to blame and you feel like you're not good enough, you're not going to have that stable foundation to actually look at the role you've played in the breakdown of your relationships or the dynamics that you're in
Hmm.
without collapse. So we don't do what I call shadow work or looking at our ego and the role that guard dog is protecting, our self from, until we have a base of self-compassion and we know that whatever we discover has a purpose. So when we're looking at the ways that we perhaps aren't perfect or aren't always so nice in our relationships or do play out our childhood wounds or do let our inner teen and our anxiety or our anger or our fear or our resentment lead, we're owning those parts, but we are not casting them away. We're not shunning them. We're not making them wrong. We're simply owning them. And so when we bring these things to light, we can integrate. So a lot of my work is actually about what is integration. It's not about sorting through all of your parts and getting rid of stuff. It's actually looking at the whole spectrum of you, the all of it, and then bringing it into cohesive awareness. So
Hmm.
you can also be playful with it, so I have a letter writing process in my new book that's coming out next year, and it's about sort of writing a letter to your own shadow
Hmm.
and owning it in a way that's funny and kind of making fun of yourself a little bit for the ways that you show up as your not so best self. And
Hmm.
I honestly think that if we just bring a little bit of humor to it and we remember that there is literally nobody on this planet who doesn't have a shadow,
Yeah.
even, these people that you think are like so conscious and like just so, self-aware, and their relationship must be perfect because look at how they dress and they do these photo shoots in the river with their little priestess wands or whatever. It's like, no, like their relationship's probably chaos. So it's like, just let go of the comparison and the illusion and just know that, everybody's human. What's underneath there? What are those masks that you wear to stay safe? Where did you learn to self-protect in order to be loved or to feel powerful in your life? One of the masks that I wore was like tough girl survivor. So like I'm actually super sensitive, psychic, inward, introspective woman. As a little girl, if I'd see a criminal and his face was up on the news, I would feel empathy for him. I could tap into that so quickly at, even 3 years old. But you can imagine being in and out of foster homes and running on the streets with gang kids who are in and out of jail. There's no room for vulnerability. So I had to toughen up quick. Otherwise, I was just going to get beat up and thrown out. So, the mask that I wore was that nothing could hurt me, nothing could touch me. But in that meant nobody could love me either.
Hmm. Hmm.
Nobody, like nobody could get in. I remember at 14 years old in this one foster home, I had this foster mom who I just loved so much. She was one of the first loves that I had had in a really long time. And she came into my bedroom one day and she said, "I love you." And I froze. I couldn't say it back. I couldn't. And I desperately wanted to. I remember in my body just wishing that I could get the words out, but I was terrified because that's how hardened I was, right? And so that's the shadow too. That's the mask. That's the protective layer where nobody can get in. If we're able to look at those things and say, yeah, you know what? In that dynamic, actually, I wasn't being vulnerable. Sure, maybe I continuously attract unavailable, avoidant men, but maybe actually what's true is that that's also a bit of a protection mechanism so that I don't have to be vulnerable.
Hmm.
If I can attract somebody who is not going to invite me into my heart, who's not going to challenge me, who's not going to try to see me, then I don't have to be seen. I can stay safe. And so, where in our own lives, in our own victimhood, I'm not talking about victimhood in the sense of like you're an actual victim a crime. I'm talking about like that inner sense of helplessness. I have nothing to do with what's happening in my life. And if we can identify that and say, well, I actually do play a role, then we're free. Then we know we can actually do something to change it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's like what I'm hearing you say is like a level of accountability and ownership, but not to the point of blame or guilt, but rather like agency.
It's liberation. It's
Mm-hmm.
liberation, and it's honestly it's funny in a way. It's humorous when you really get down to it, especially when you do it with a partner even. It's funny because we are all so human and we want so badly to get it right, and we really
Mm-hmm.
want, we want to be loved, we want to be seen a certain way, and we'll do anything to try to get it sometimes, especially when we're living from the wound. And so the more that we can free ourselves up to just be like, I'm imperfect, here's who am on a bad day. I can be controlling, I can be messy, I can be critical, I can be harsh, I can be judgmental, whatever it is, just owning it actually reduces the charge around it. The more
Yeah.
you own something and give it a seat at the table, the less it has to make itself known.
Yeah, it feels like almost like the parts work, like when people do
Mhm.
IFS
Mhm.
or inner child work, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a part of me that is guarded. There's a part of me that is jealous. There's a part of me that is terrified.
Yeah.
So rather than be like, I am terrified, I am
Mhm.
jealous. It doesn't have to be the entirety of who you are. But if you can name it and, like you said, give it a seat at the table, there can be more love when it's not the entirety of us. And I have
Mhm.
this theory around like monotheism, and I don't even like to call it polytheism, but just
Mhm.
rather like seeing the many fractals of the divine and the many faces of the
Yeah.
divine. You know,
Yeah.
like how would we be different and how would we see the divinity inside of all the parts of ourselves if we didn't just grow up with this one God, this like one
Mhm.
idea of good or bad, right or wrong. And
Mhm.
it sounds to me when you first started talking about becoming the one and the work that you do, it sounds quite Gnostic in its nature. Like it
Mhm.
sounds like it is the Gnostic Gospels of Mary
Mhm.
Magdalene or Thomas, like these teachings that were, removed from Christianity as we know it and
Yeah.
buried underground in Egypt. These teachings that, like, hey, you are whole and perfect, and you were not born wrong, and you can
Mm.
bring heaven into earth through your body. Um,
Mhm.
so I'm curious. You
Absolutely.
strike me as someone who's very soft, and I mean
Mhm.
that as such a
Mhm.
compliment. You strike me as
Mhm.
someone who really like chooses to have your heart open. I don't feel a
Mhm.
lot of guarding from you
Mhm.
or like calcified shielding.
Mhm.
And hearing your background and the ability, like the first woman who showed you like maternal full love that you couldn't
Mhm.
even say out loud, I love you back.
Mhm.
Like what was the process? How did you soften yourself, and how do you recommend people who are listening to this take a first step or deepen their softening process of opening up their heart so they can not only give but also receive more love?
Yeah. It was such a long and beautiful journey for me, and I think, what I want to say is some of the things that I did, I actually wouldn't recommend to others, but that's why I wrote the book that I did. And that's why I'm doing this work, is because I've
Mm-hmm.
sort of found a way to bring people into that space of healing without having to do all of the intense stuff that I did, because a lot of it,
Mm-hmm.
as you know, a sixth line in human design is very much trial and error and a lot of intensity in those first 30 years. So I did so many things. I did breath work constantly. I was doing rebirthing. I did a lot of mother and father wound work. I sat in so many ceremonies with plant medicines of all kinds. I had some really, really potent experiences on ayahuasca, which I don't necessarily recommend, but that was a big turning point for me,
Mm-hmm.
where in one ceremony I saw these two bubbles go up on a like screen in the sky and it was my mother, but it was mother archetype and then it was woman, and I saw the split, and it was like, you have to let go of this idea of mother archetype in this life. You didn't get that. She couldn't be that. She didn't have the skills. She didn't have the foundation to embody mother archetype. But mother archetype is the one who got it wrong. Mother archetype is the one who owed you something. Mother archetype is the one who should have but didn't, that you're angry at. And woman is somebody who you just have so much compassion for,
Mm-hmm.
because she just fought for her life and she's lucky to be alive, and she did her very best and she did love you and she gave you all she could. and she gave you this life. And so it was like, okay, I'm letting go of that archetype. I'm just going to see her as woman. And so that alone really helped me because I could see the ways in which I was attaching to this identity that she couldn't embody.
Yeah.
And if I let that go, then I could be free and she could be free and we could have a different kind of relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So doing that mother and father wound work was really, really potent for me. And then doing a lot of somatic work, like a lot, somatic experiencing, different somatic practices, and understanding that the body is storing so much memory. And so if you come home to your body, it's not enough to know the concepts, you have to embody them. Just like you said in the very beginning, you were like, I have all this knowledge, but it was something different to really feel it in the body.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I'd like to take people, is to have the body actually digest and synthesize that knowing of wholeness. And then, of course, there's the practice. Practicing with, I find friendships, other women, sisterhood, the best place to practice. Like letting women take care of you and brush your hair and sing over you on your birthday and tickle your back or give massages and just be fun and playful together. That's why I loved when in the meditation in the beginning you were like brought our inner children forth. And I was like, oh, that's so fun. And I really encourage women to get into spaces where it's not competitive, it's not cliquey. You don't have to be cool or popular. You can just be yourself and you can just practice showing up as you. So those are some of the ways that you begin to take those walls down, and through time and evidence that it's safe, you will soften.
Mm. So beautiful and so true. I just was in a 7-month mastermind with a dear sister and friend of mine, Regina
Mm,
Thomasschauer, and
mm,
she's really big on sistering and
mm,
like just the amount of somatic practicing and moving our
mm,
rage and moving our sorrow and being in eros together as
mm,
well. Like it's just so safe and so healing,
mm.
and it's become such a huge part of my life. I mean, I'm really lucky that my best friends are also like, world class somatic and tantric
Totally.
facilitators.
Yeah.
um, but when I'm in such a like echo chamber of it that it's hard for me to believe that other people don't have this.
Yeah. I know.
And I'm like, oh, why isn't everyone doing this? Why isn't
Yeah.
everyone somatic experiencing or
Yeah.
brushing each other's hair or sistering each other? And I'm
Totally.
curious to know you talked about the mother wound and the father wound. And I have this theory that right now we're like, I very much believe that our political leaders are like an outpicturing of the collective consciousness, right? That
Mhm,
we get the leaders that are expressive
mhm,
of the collective state of consciousness, and
mhm,
oftentimes it's the shadow and the unintegrated piece. And I think that for so many generations we've had like unhealed father wound and daddy issues, and it feels like right now that is getting really kicked up in the collective, in a way that is forcing us to look at it and deal with it. And I'm
mhm,
noticing, um like, I mean, I think people have been in fight or flight for a long time. I mean, at least since 2020, quite actively as a collective. And
absolutely.
I'm seeing like a lot of like, especially in the wellness community, like people attacking each other right now. Like this person hasn't posted, this person did posted, you posted the
Yeah.
wrong thing. It's like we're trying so desperately to
Yeah.
find an enemy that we can persecute,
Yeah.
because part of what seems to be happening is like, look at this egregious abuse, and there potentially will be no consequences.
Mhm,
And then how does that kick up the victim? How does that exacerbate the daddy wound? And right now it feels like anytime shadows get highlighted, there is an opportunity for alchemy. There is an opportunity for integration. And so I'm just curious if there's anything that you would like to share as to help people right now, people who've either been victims of abuse, people who are finding
mhm,
themselves in fight or flight, people that are
mhm,
seeing their own daddy issues get kicked up. Like if there's advice that you would give or ways that they could help regulate or ways to use this as an opportunity, not only for individual healing, but also collective.
mhm. Yeah. Well, ultimately, I think what you're seeing is a reflection of the lack of initiation that we have in our culture.
Yep.
Right? There's just a lack of initiation. And so there's nobody teaching people how to be in power responsibly. And there's a lot of abuse and betrayal and wounding that's happening. And I see it as sort of a family system problem as well, because these are, at the helm of in power, we have all of these people who clearly weren't loved and are desperate for power.
Mm-hmm.
And on a collective level, there is sort of a mass traumatization that I think is happening because of social media and the way that we are constantly exposed to violence and abuse on a day-to-day basis at a level that is just totally not what we're programmed for. And so, especially right now with everything that's happening, I actually invite people, especially those who have been victims of abuse and violence, to get off the screens, get off the phone, and go out into nature. And, you know, the father wound in the collective is great, and it's weaving throughout men and women. It's permeating all of our consciousness in some way. And what I find really helpful, again, is to come back to the archetype and to find places in nature where you do feel held and you do feel safe, that you can anchor into while you're moving through whatever it is that you're moving through. So I like to refer to the elements for that. So, finding a place where you can just be held on a rock near a river, or being in the mountains, rooted at the base of a tree. Where can you feel that protection, that safety in non human form, in the elements? And it sounds maybe a little bit ambiguous or vague for some people because they're like, what are you talking about? But you'll find that when you get quiet and you go back to those places over and over, and you actually allow yourself to feel that safety and that energy, you'll remember that you are whole and that you are safe and that you can be held beyond, the humans on this planet that maybe couldn't hold you or that are not safe. And I feel that that's all that each of us can do, is actually be fully responsible for our own healing and our own process so that we can make choices that reflect that. And, right now, what we're seeing is a real big shift and a big wake up, where I think the walls are coming down, and we're seeing that we pedestal people and make them our gurus, and we make them our sort of goalposts, and we don't know anything about them. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
look at some of these celebrity authors and figureheads who quite clearly have a lot to work out. Some of them are literally in the Epstein files. And these are people that people have been following for decades, pedestaling. And I think it's a real invitation to just come back to ourselves and to actually anchor into self-trust again. Like being in our bodies and actually tuning into, does this person actually feel authentic? Like, does this person actually have anything of value for me, of wisdom for me, or are they just a celebrity? you know and
Mm-hmm.
is there something that I could do for myself right now? Is there a knowing within myself that perhaps I'm ignoring that I could come back to?
Mm-hmm.
That's, I think, is what's happening right now. I think that's the shift that's coming,
Mm-hmm.
which I
Yeah.
love.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing you say is like, can we actually find a physical spot in nature, a tree, a lake, the grass, the earth that you can go back to and really feel held, to connect back to the collective mother? I like to frame
Mhm.
actually Mother Earth as our lover, so that
Mhm.
we get out of this like martyr relationship with her,
Mhm.
and make it more reciprocal.
Mhm.
But either way, like feeling held, feeling safe,
Yeah.
and then that that we're shifting paradigms from this
Yeah.
guru pedestalization with politicians, with leaders, with celebrities, with healers, and instead like
Mhm.
looking to ourselves. And I think that the tricky part there is that oftentimes, part of the value of any sort of like celebrity healer is not just it's not just the person,
Yeah.
it's the community that forms around them.
Yeah.
And I think there is a lot of loneliness and siloness, so it's like, how do we not throw the baby out with the bathwater? Like, yes, obviously
Absolutely.
this is a sovereign journey, and everybody's fucked up and everybody's God,
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
equal
Yeah.
measures. So it's like, how do we not silo ourselves and be like, well, I'm just going to do this alone,
Yeah.
while simultaneously not thinking that anyone else is better than us or worse than
Well, and I
us.
think that's the thing, right? Is I mean, I'm not suggesting that you don't follow anybody or that you don't, admire people's work. I mean, I I admire lots of people's work. I love, there's, people that I will go to their workshops or take a course with them or whatever it is. But I'll never give away my agency. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll never take on their belief just because they said that that's what's true. I run everything through my own body and through my own inner knowing, even if I highly respect them. I've worked with spiritual teachers for years on end, and I've had times where I say, I don't believe that. That doesn't feel true for me. I'm not going to teach that. I'm not going to pass that on. It doesn't mean that I don't respect that teacher that I worked with, or that I don't admire them or love what they've shared with me. But I am sovereign. And what I think we all need to remember is that people are people. They're human beings. There's nobody in who's embodying perfection for you. So this person that you may have on a pedestal that you think has all the answers, they don't. So
Mm-hmm.
they can mirror certain things for you. They can evoke and activate things for you. They can be the person that's there at the right time to awaken something in you, and you can be deeply grateful for that. But still hold on to your own agency and allow your body to be the guide. And yes, to community. Oh my gosh, that's like my biggest mission in life, is to help people heal their wounds so that they can be in connection. And it's not even about being in romantic relationship. It's actually friendship and community that I think is the most powerful healing thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so the more that we are able to rebuild our sense of self and trust ourselves, the more we're going to call in those people that we can actually build life in a new way with. And it's funny how in our culture right now, especially you see the dating culture, it's like, oh, I saw something on the New York Times or something recently where it was like the new rules for dating in 2026. And it was like, if he has a roommate, he's out or something. But I was like, okay, I think I kind of get what you're saying. And like, why not have a roommate? Why would you want to live alone in a box in New York if you could live with somebody else and have kinship, right? It's like
Yes.
this whole weird thing of like everybody has to have everything themselves and you have to do it all alone and you should, be completely independent. And it's like, actually, that is not our nature. Our nature is skill sharing. Our nature is, I'm good at this, you're good at that. Let's come together and create beauty and more peace and freedom for ourselves.
Mm.
So it's like, get the ego out of the way. What's true is relationship.
Amen. And I think, I mean, I hear what maybe the jux there is like, hey, maybe don't date someone that you have to support and
Yeah.
financially support, who they don't have their shit together.
Yeah.
But yes, to roommates and community. I had a roommate 2 years ago. I was
Yeah.
living with Regina. Like we lived
Love
together for
that.
4 years, and it was
Yeah.
so fun. And
So fun.
we would dance together and play with my son, and it
Aw.
made life so much sweeter. But
Yeah.
neither one of us were doing that because we like couldn't pay our own rent. It was like
Yeah.
because we knew that this would be a value add for our lives, and it really
Yeah.
was.
Yeah. And
Um,
and some people are going to come together, maybe they can't pay their own rent, but if they're coming together and they're conscious and aware and they're happy, then that's really all that matters. My
mhm.
husband and I, we live on 10 acres in the forest on a little island, and we have other people living on the land with us, and we have this beautiful community. And my daughter got to grow up surrounded by aunties and uncles and nightly dance parties and big family meals, and we really got a sense of the village helping us raise our daughter, and I can't imagine another way.
Oh, I was just in Nosara this past week. My son was on
Mm.
winter break,
Yeah.
and there was like 4 or 5 friends who had their kids there, and they created a school there. So they brought in like martial arts experts from China
Oh,
and all these amazing teachers, and all the kids would like have a bike gang to school. They would surf in the morning
cute.
and then bike to school together, and then at night we would hang out and do dinner together. And it really felt like a village. It was like you get
Mhm.
them a snack, or like the kids would hang out at their own table, and it because I'm a like part-time single mom, and so it's like the ease on my nervous system from being like in a house by myself in the woods with my son to like, oh, there's a whole community of other kids and other parents. It's just so
Yeah.
much more fun and better.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's like night and day.
Hmm.
And mothering with other people, especially for me, I found mothering with other women around, having aunties around, it just made it so much more joyful. And that's the baseline. Like that's what I feel that we need the most. So I'm really excited to start doing live events and creating that. Maybe
Yeah.
you'll be there. I don't know. So, yeah, I think it's really important that we do the healing work that's needed so that we can
Mhm.
actually just be ourselves with each other and deepen those bonds. Because I think over the next 5 to 10 years, things are going to change a lot. And what I'd love to see is people actually prioritizing community again in a way that's deeper than just, oh, I have a good friend network, but like people are always saying that their dream is to buy land and build communities together. Well, like, could we actually do that? You know?
I mean, I think that it might be a necessity very soon. Like, I think
Exactly.
that might be part of this big
Mhm.
awakening and
Mhm.
shifting of, to me, it's like the structures that have been built on unsustainable foundations are coming down much quicker than I think we're prepared for.
Yeah.
And I think my prayer is that on the other side is this version of heaven on earth, which certainly involves more community,
Yeah.
more planetary paradise.
Uh-huh.
So I'd like to come back to this idea of manifesting, where
Uh-huh.
you
Yeah.
because I know a lot of people think like, oh, I'm going to get what I want, when actually, I believe, and I feel like you do too, we don't get what we want, we get who we are,
Yeah.
which is why this idea of coming back to yourself and doing
Mhm.
the inner work, becoming the one, healing the inner child, that, like, the more you can invest in your own relationship with yourself, the more you can heal and love and integrate those wounded parts of yourself. Inevitably, that is going to change the lens through which you perceive reality. It's going to change the vibrational state of who you are attracting. And I think it changes even like what lessons you need to learn. I believe that relationships are spiritual syllabus. And so if you can really like do that inner work, it's like then you're working at a PhD level versus a kindergarten level. So just tell me about, I know there was something you wanted to come back to around
Yeah.
manifestation and relationships. Because I think that it's it's such an endless spiritual syllabus.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, and it feels like you've dedicated so much of your life to it. So would love to
Mhm.
hear what you have to share with folks around it.
Yeah, I want to touch on it because I heard what you said in the beginning about, maybe am I not manifesting right, because I'm single and I hear this all the time and I think there's a side to manifestation that we don't often speak to, which is that sometimes in order for the manifestation to birth in your life, there's a clearing that needs to happen first. And so when things are falling apart around you, or everything is crumbling, or the slate is being wiped clean, that's not necessarily a bad thing or a failure. And it doesn't mean you're not manifesting correctly. It means that something in your life needs to be cleared out in order for that thing that you're desiring or calling in to manifest. And to me, that's a beautiful thing.
Hmm.
So there are cycles to how we live. We operate on these, what I see as 9-year cycles in numerology. And so on that 9 year, what we see is there's endings, there's finishing, there's tying up those loops, right? And we were in a collective 9 year in 2025. So we've just entered a 1 year in 2026. And I was also in my personal 9 year as well. So it was double whammy. But what we'll find is more in these 9 years as a collective is there's a lot of loose ends that need to be tied up. There's things that need to end. And that is the preparation. So when we think about manifesting, we think about the vision boards and the writing everything down in your journal and just visualizing all of the good things that happen. So then when something doesn't go our way, we think, oh, well, I've failed. But instead, I want you to reframe that as this is preparation,
Mm,
because sometimes we actually need to go through those painful moments to gain the wisdom, but also the capacity and the gratitude to hold what comes next.
mm.
Mhm.
Amen.
Mhm.
Amen. It's such a good reminder. It's so fascinating because like and I think we all teach, well, I'll speak for myself. I teach the things that I need to remember the most.
Mhm.
And I teach meditation because I need to remember to surrender. I teach
Mhm.
manifestation because I like to put my attention on what is possible. But
Mhm.
really, it's been a big realization as of late is that really what I'm teaching, I've only been teaching one thing,
Mhm.
and it's unmanifest and manifest. And in order to create anything, you have to go into the void. In order to
Mhm.
manifest anything, you have to go into the unmanifest.
Mm.
That's the style of meditation that I teach. We're just going into the infinite potentiality, into the quantum field.
Yeah,
And from that space of everything and nothing is the fertile soil to plant the seeds for what you desire. But
I
if there
love
is not
this.
space for that, then you can't even plant the seeds. And so thank you for the reminder that I've been in this sort of death portal, clearing the way over the
Mhm.
past year and a half.
Mhm.
And it's easy to go into what's wrong. Is there something wrong? And it's like, nope, this is the clearing of the space, the
Mhm.
fertilizing of the soil, the clearing the slate, and the huge expansion, huge amount of shadow work and inner child work,
Yeah.
so that what comes in next is like serving this next chapter, serving this next
Yes. Yes.
phase.
I love that. And have you heard the poem by Wendell Berry about going into the dark with the light?
I don't think so.
There's like a little song. I'd love to sing it for you because I feel like this one is so symbolic of what we're talking about. It says, to go in the dark with the light is to know the light. To know dark, go without sight. And you'll find that the dark too blooms and sings, and has traveled by dark feet and dark wings. I have a little bit of a cold, so it's hard to get that out, but
Oh no,
just, it's a solstice song, and it's like going into the dark with a light is to know the light, but to know the dark, you have to go dark.
oof,
Mm.
so good. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Thank you for
Mhm.
sharing your voice and the
Mm.
purity of your voice.
Mm.
So, as we start to bring it to a close,
Mhm.
I'm curious to know, like, why do you think, so the show's called Why Isn't Everyone Doing This? So,
Mhm.
why do you think everyone isn't becoming the one? Why are they not doing somatic work, shadow work? Why are they
Mm.
not investing in themselves in order to attract, the things that they desire?
There is so much distraction in the world, and
Hmm.
we're not taught that we are the one. We're taught from very early that we need to conform and shift and contort our identity in order to be loved or to be chosen. And there's so much programming in the world about, finding a partner, being good enough or being pretty enough or being whatever enough. And so it's all a distraction. And so we really do forget that coming home to ourselves is the most important foundation. And so that's, what I find in my mothering. I've said to people before, I feel like my greatest job in all of this as a mother is just to continue to anchor her back to what she already knows to be true and to be the guardrails to preserve her essence. It's not to teach her, it's to help her continue to remember. And so that is what I think most of us are doing now. We're remembering.
It's such a
Mhm.
beautiful reframe on parenting that
Mhm.
we're here to learn from them, really. And yeah, they
Mhm.
put those guardrails of them
Mhm.
holding their connection to the divine
Mhm. Mhm.
as long as they can. Um, what if you could install one code, one transmission, one
Mhm.
gift into the collective of the species right now? What would you love to install? You could wave a magic wand over the planet, and everyone's like, upgrade. What would you love for people to have?
It would be the truth of impermanence. I feel that if we could remember on a day-to-day basis of that we are impermanent and that we're borrowing this place and that would remind us also that we're connected to it in a way that is so much deeper. So I feel that our impermanence would allow us to slow down and stop chasing and striving for more and better and bigger all the time and allow us to really be in deep relationship in a way that is more reciprocal with others and with the earth.
Mm. So help me understand, because for a lot of people, it's like, well, it's not
Yeah.
not my house. I can just
Yeah.
destroy it. I'm going to go to a football game and just leave my trash on the
Mhm.
stadium ground because it's
Mhm.
not. I'm just leaving. Like,
Mhm.
how does impermanence invite us to take better care of ourselves and the
Mhm.
planet?
In a way, what I'm saying is remember that you're gonna die. Not in a morbid way, but in a beautiful way that
100%
reminds you,
death
like,
rate.
A, yeah, 100% death rate. You're not getting out of here alive. So if you're spending your whole life in distraction mode, in chasing and striving and trying to pursue, being bigger and better and richer and having more, but you're not deepening in love, in connection to the planet, into your family, to the ones that you love around you, you're missing the point. And so, in having a relationship with death where you remember your impermanence, it also invites us to live more in alignment with what actually matters.
Hmm.
It helps me all of the time, because when I'm getting distracted and I'm thinking about all of these things that I want to achieve and create, and yes, I love to create, I love it, but that's not coming with me. The
Hmm.
only thing that's coming with me is how my soul grows in this lifetime. And it's going to grow through love and reciprocity with the earth, with my partner, with my daughter, with my friends, with the people that I work with. And so that is the foundation. And if we remember that, we're all going to die, we're all going back to the earth, but the earth is the thing that's holding us. She's going to continue. It might shift the way that we operate, and that would
Mm.
be my hope.
Mm.
Mhm.
So beautiful. Reminds me of, they said that Michelangelo's best sculpture was meant to have been in ice.
Mhm.
It's like, wow. I feel like that's much of motherhood, right? Or parenthood.
Totally.
It's like your greatest sculpture is happening in ice because it's just changing.
It's changing every day, every moment. You
Mhm.
cannot predict what's going to happen next.
Mhm. Was there anything that you wish that I had asked you? Is there anything like, man, I really wanted to share this transmission, or this, anything you feel like maybe people aren't quite ready for just yet, but that you're dying to share?
I think you're an amazing interviewer, and I loved this conversation so much. Everything that you asked just really brought us into a very deep place. I feel that we covered a lot of ground, and I think the message that I would anchor people back to is just remembering that self compassion muscle while you're doing this deeper inquiry of yourself,
Mhm.
and just know that it's safe to be all of you.
Yeah, that God is not
Mhm.
just God of the light, that God is
Mhm.
God of all of it.
Mhm.
Your light, your shadow, your gifts, your wounds.
Mhm.
It's all part of the karmic lesson.
Mhm.
Wow,
Mhm.
Moshe, I'm so happy to finally meet you. Thank you for your
Mhm.
work. I want to just really invite everyone to check out your book, Becoming the One.
Thank
And now
you.
you have a journal,
Yeah.
Becoming the One, a guided journal, which I'm very excited to do.
Mhm.
Um, Truly, like I felt like when I listened to it, I didn't read it, but I
Mhm.
listened to it,
Mhm.
and it felt like you were talking exactly to me.
Mm.
Do you recommend this book for people who are already in relationship, or mostly?
Totally.
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Yeah,
Hmm.
I have a lot of people who read it when they're in a relationship, and helps them make their relationship better.
Hmm.
And, people who read it at all stages of their lives. I think one of the things that I want to reiterate is that, when we talked about shadow work and looking at our own roles that we play in the breakdowns of our relationships, the reason that that can make our relationships better, especially if we're in one at the moment, is because it also gives us the capacity to let our partners off the hook for their imperfections. So sometimes when my husband is really driving me crazy, or I'm projecting a bunch of stuff onto him, I just tune in for a moment. Like, what's it like to be with me right now? How's my energy frequency? Like, what's my vibe in this moment? Actually, he's also putting up with me, right? And so when I can bring it home, I'm not, giving him a pass to be rude or dismissive or any of those things. Um, I'm just simply owning my own frequency and remembering that I'm also creating the climate in my home. And it just really does benefit us all to let each other off the hook a little bit and let ourselves be human and messy, and make it a little bit more light and playful, instead of having to be so serious all the time.
Yeah, it's such good advice that, like my coach used to say, like, be awesome to tell the truth to.
Yeah.
Don't expect everyone to tell you the truth if you're terrible when you receive the truth.
Yes.
And so it's like, be awesome to love. Be awesome to bring conflict to. And
Yeah.
that's something that we can be in our wheelhouse.
Hmm.
So I love that. Of like, if things are going awry, how good am I to be in relationship with right now?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I
Yeah.
used to have a spiritual teacher who, one of the first things that he would always put up on the whiteboard when we would come into the room with new people would be, "Would you date you?"
I would date me.
Yeah,
I
good.
would. I think
Yeah.
I'm a good time.
Yeah. I
It's
have
a
no
real
doubt.
it's a real good time.
I have no doubt about that.
It might be an intense ride, but it's a fun one.
Yes. We all just want to
Well,
have fun.
yeah, exactly. Well, I've had so much fun getting to know you, and
Me
truly, like,
too.
thank you for your transmissions. Thank you for
Mhm.
the creativity and the generosity and the synthesis that you have
Mhm.
put into this book, and also on Rising Woman. So those of you who are listening, if you've enjoyed this conversation, I would love to know, like, what were your ahas? What do you feel inspired to check out regarding somatic work or shadow work or inner child work? If you want to screenshot this and tag us, I'm at Ziva Meditation. She's at Rising Woman. You can just, screenshot it and just say, like, what was your big takeaway? And then in so doing, you inspire other people to receive this media as medicine. And I know that both of us have big missions, and we want to birth the frequency of heaven on earth right here, right now. It's happening. It's time. Like, we're in a massive transition. And so I love you. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you next week on Why Isn't Everyone Doing This?